The only thing hotter than Olympia right now is Oli Blunder's Season 5, Week 5. Let's kick off with a game between Jeremy and Jake, an example of get your pieces out. D4, D5. White is developing very smoothly, just bringing up pieces to natural squares, attacking back in the center, and then black is thrusting out with these pawns on the wing here and kind of doing this like side expansion over here. And this central control will almost always benefit the player that is fighting for these central squares. So the bishop comes forward attacking the rook, and black moves another pawn forward, and this f6 pawn is always a weakness that you have to be careful of. Bishop draws back, again another pawn push on the side, and white finds a beautiful idea here of bringing the knight to the side, which is really just some bait, and black takes the bait and gets hit with a checkmate. Just beautiful little sequence here. King has nowhere to go. This knight's blocking. These squares are all blocked for the king to escape from. And just to make some notes, this is a great find. If you try to take this way, with the knight, this recapture would actually allow the rook to cover, so you can't go that way. And likewise, if you go this way, if they captured with the pawn, then you'd still be able to have this checkmate. But black could capture with the knight, and then there's no checkmate here because the knight can draw back. So just a great find to find this knight move to the side and exposing that diagonal for the queen to just deliver a very nice checkmate. So we're going to cover a whole series this time. I don't think I've done that yet, but this series is wild. You can't predict who's going to win any of these games, and we're just going to launch into it. So we got Alex versus Leslie here. So we get an interesting French defense with the queen coming to e7. And white is expanding and just taking up space. Get a couple of trades here. Knight coming in aggressively. And white's done a good job of just getting their pieces out. King castled. Everything's pretty solid from their side. Just defending the pawn. Nothing wrong with that. And black is developing pieces, but not necessarily ones that are helping get the king to safety. So now the queen is attacked, and we get in a flurry of exchanges here that actually results in black being up a bishop for a pawn. Actually, not even for a pawn, just up a clean bishop. So white goes on an attack to try to take advantage of this king that's stuck in the center. It brings the queen over to the side. Queen jumps in, attacking the rook. And the only defense, according to the computer, so if you're watching the evaluation bar, is to come in and sack the bishop. If you take, then you'd get checkmated, so you would have to take the bishop, and then there would be perpetual. Instead, the king moves forward, the rook gets taken, and then black launches into a vicious counterattack here, bringing the pawn down the board. Pawn has just launched forward, taken. Queen comes back, technically pinning the pawn, but the pawn can take with check. So this pawn has just had quite the journey. But we also did have this mate in one. But that's all right. Take the pawn, deliver check. Rook takes the pawn, another check. Coming down, this king is in dire straits now. Knight has to block, and the bishop takes. Rook takes. bishop takes, and white finds the only saving move in the position, bringing the queen down, taking the rook, and then delivering a sequence of checks here. There is a mate in this position, so it's a good one to practice and see. But nothing wrong with just delivering more checks and eventually corralling. Well, so now white is in a tough situation. We got a checkmate threat on the h2 here, so defends that with the rook. The bishop comes here delivering check, but that allows the rook to take the bishop. Now the queen is pinned, and white comes forward and gets a nice little checkmate. Everything is covered. And yeah, wild game. So let's run it back with the second game, Leslie versus Alex. Get a queen's pawn game and an exchange happening here, check coming in. And pawn thrust to the side. These are always weakening for pawns when those pawns move forward, but black does have a lot of central control over this e4 square. But white's doing a good job of trying to get their pieces onto good posts. Again, exchange. Bishop needed to be captured with the queen to help defend. And white jumps in and stacks on a pawn. Queen comes up, trying to put some pressure probably down this way to try to help prevent this bishop from developing. But white finds just a gorgeous move here with taking the knight. So leaving this knight hanging, it is counterattacked right here by the queen. Leaves the knight hanging and takes this knight forward, which can be captured. If you captured this way, then you would get hit by a fork. So this is why that knight cannot actually be captured by the queen. And then likewise, when you capture that knight, then the queen comes forward, now defending the knight. So white delivers some checks, driving the queen or the king off to the side here. Attacks the queen with the pawn. Pawn gives themselves up for the pawn. So, and then tries to get a fork going here, except for this rook is defended, but tries to counterattack and drive this queen away from the protection of the rook, which they ultimately do, and so was able to at least get a rook back. And then good job of attacking the trapped bishop over here by white. Knight was attacked. Move the knight back. Nope, not like that. And queen is trying to get into the position and try to. It's hard to get the checkmate when you have all of these pieces surrounding black's king. So even though black is down a lot of material, it's still difficult to kind of break through. So the knight comes forward, attacking the queen, and the queen takes the pawn that is defended by the pawn, but does deliver check. So black moves out of check. And now white moves the queen, well, instead takes the bishop over here, leaving this queen hanging, still able to be taken by that pawn, but this pawn goes and attacks this pawn and the knight. And knight moves out of the way with check. Knight gets picked up, check off to the side. Now all these pieces are covering some great diagonals, and this is a nice knight move with a checkmate. Queen covers along here and just gorgeous little finish. Let's check in on our tournament leader right now, Treavor versus Leif. Again, e4, e5. Treavor goes for the Scotch opening, and specifically the Scotch Gambit. A pretty aggressive gambit where you're just trying to get your pieces out and active as fast as possible. Leif comes forward delivering this check, which Treavor blocks with the pawn, giving up another pawn here. So far all of these pawns have been taken, and then castle's out of the way. So not even worried about giving up material here. And Leif pushes the pawn forward. If you take another pawn, you end up with these bishops coming down and causing a lot of torment for you. You'd probably have to bring your knight out, probably get hit, then your knight has to move somewhere, and I don't even know what's going on in this position. So slight advantage for white in something like this, but just very, very complicated with this queen or this king stuck in the center here, and would be a pretty dynamic position and hard one to defend. Probably kick the knight out, be what I would be looking at here. Anyway, that's why Leif chose instead to push forward. I think also just getting pieces out. I'm not sure. Assume you can just bring the knight to f6 and you don't have to worry about this push, though it does look a little bit scary to me. So you might consider going this way, but then that takes away a square for the bishop. So it's hard, I think, in these kinds of positions to know what is the appropriate plan for black to do. So instead, Leif just pushes forward, gets rid of the pawn that way, and then covers the square, worried about the bishop coming out and putting a pin when the knight lands on f6. Or instead came to e7 just to avoid this whole sequence with the pawn coming forward. Treavor jumps the knight in. I think here you could actually consider attacking the bishop. Since the bishop has no real good retreats available to it, like going this way would not work at all, I assume. You just get pushed back, and then this has to be good for white. And then likewise, if you capture, then you're attacking, and then I assume you can get this kind of setup here. So you get just this great, not battery, not like that. This great battery along the diagonal here. But also very forcing move of bringing the knight forward, attacking the pieces, but this allows black to just ignore everything and castle, and at least they got their king out of the center, and they can work on defending from here. So we get a couple exchanges, reinforcing the knight, trying to hold on, and I think this is something you'll see in advanced games a lot of the times, is trying to hold pieces in advanced outposts as long as possible, because it just makes it more inconvenient for the player to have to work around. So Trevor's trying to get this diagonal open this way. We get a counterattack on the bishop, which is ignored. Again, might as well threaten mate, which is blocked. This is a tricky, this is probably a necessary move. Well, it's definitely a necessary move because of the mate threat. You do have this open diagonal here, which is a little bit, could be worrisome. So Treavor brings over and pins. And this pawn is pinned two different ways now. So the pawn gets reinforced. There's no option to capture anything. And then the knight is kicked out. So knight just needs to retreat. And now the pawn is finally grabbed in the center here. And brings the rook forward. I assume doubling up on the position, trying to get extra pressure onto this pawn. But the queen moves out of the way, so now this bishop is threatened. If I can take that. And so black, everything's now equal. All the pawns and materials is now even out. But black has solved a lot of the problems. They now have this light square bishop to cover these light squares around the king. The pawns are on dark squares, so there's a pretty good defensive setup for black here. Likewise, there's no problems in white's position either. We encourage a queen trade, and some more pieces kind of come off. And you're kind of heading down. There's a lot of potential for there to be an opposite colored bishop endgame here. Bishop goes and attacks the rook here, so it needs to move out of the way, get an exchange, and at this point, there's not a lot of material left on the board. Good try to keep some material on. If this exchange happened, then this is an easy draw for both players to make. There's not really you might have a little bit of potential as on the white side because of the pawns over here, but white can just hold, or black can just hold this pawn here, and it's not easy to get to break through with these pieces. Maybe you could try attacking. Pawn would go forward, and then I think you could just focus on bringing the king over, and there's not a way to really push these pawns through. So instead, tries to hold on to the knights to try to at least give some attacking chances. But now that everything's locked up on these light squares here, it's going to be very hard for white to, or either side, honestly, to break through. So again, more pieces are getting locked up here. And black is just shuffling back and forth. It's important to note this knight is doing a great job of covering this square, and then these two squares are covered by the pawns. So the black or the white king has no entry into the position. So this knight is kind of holding the whole position together. Likewise, white has set up a blockade along these squares, so this king has nowhere to go. It's kind of interesting position where both sides are a little bit imprisoned. Now the knight tries to move around, but this just allows black to trade off the pieces. And again, there's no entry square if the only place, these pawns cannot be attacked by the bishop. And the only thing you could potentially try is to walk the king to here, but black can just shuffle back and forth, and there's no way to enter the position. So that's why it ended up as a draw. But a very, very tight game. But lots of tactics are hidden in this one with just the number of pins and counterattacks and just pressure along, attacking the king. But Leif did an excellent job of defending, and this takes down Trevor's perfect record. So good work. Season is getting exciting. Halfway through, we got Treavor on top, Funk in second, and Max in third position, all within 1 point of each other. So these players are playing really great chess right now.